Frankie, Dev, welcome guys. So our session today is an almost exclusively New York mixologist one. So today we're going to go deep into the flavors of shochu and how they apply to cocktails. And we've got different takes on all of these from Brian Matthys, Thomas Waugh, Frankie and Dev over at EO in the Liquor Lab there. What we're going to do right now is show a Shochu 101, which is a quick little explanation of the basics of shochu. If you know them already, now is a good time to go and pour yourself a glass of shochu or whatever it may be to hand. If you got awamori, drink it. But if you're not sure or you'd like a quick refresher, stick around. It's only 5 minutes long. And after that, when we come back, we're going to go straight over to Mr. Brian Matthys, live from his living room. One of the most accomplished and knowledgeable bartenders in New York City when it comes to all Japanese products and spirits. But right now, our friend Chicago at the JSS is going to roll the video for Shochu 101. Welcome to Shochu 101 with the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association and me, Phillip Duff. The origins of shochu can be dated back as far as 1546 when a Portuguese explorer talked about araki that he drank in Japan, meaning distilled alcohol based on rice. In 1559, some workmen on a temple in Japan wrote graffiti complaining that the head priest who'd hired them was so stingy he didn't even give them any shochu. And shochu's birthplace is the Kyushu region around southern Japan, and also including the Ryukyu kingdom centered around Okinawa. Shochu is a Japanese distilled spirit. It's famously made from barley, which is 42% of all the shochu made in Japan for the most recent year we have figures for, sweet potato, about another 45%, rice, sugarcane, or other ingredients. You sacrifice it with koji and yeast. The koji, an aspergillus mold, turns the starches of whatever base ingredients it is into sugar, and the yeast, of course, turns that sugar into alcohol. The koji also produces citric acid, which wards off bacterial infections. That's not unimportant, considering you're making it in a warm tropical climate. Single distilled honkaku shochu goes one time through a pot still, and it's bottled at less than 45%. Continual column still korowai shochu is bottled at less than 36%. And if you make a blend that's got 49% or less of the pot still honkaku, it's called korowai otsurai konwa shochu. And if you make a blend that's got 51% or more pot still honkaku, it's otsurai korowai konwa. After you've made it, you can rest it in glass, ceramic, steel, or wood, and most of it is bottled and sold at 25%. The ancestor of shochu is from the Ryukyu island. It's called awamori, and it's a black koji, Thai indica rice, single ferment honkaku shochu, bottled at 45%. And because all shochu has no added sugar and no carbohydrates, some people say it doesn't give you a hangover. The raw materials include the famous sweet potato and rice and barley, but you can make it from 24 different ones, including kelp, sesame, carrot, and even ginger. Koji is the key to understanding shochu. Yellow koji was what shochu was originally made with, but when black koji came to Japan, it was discovered that black koji produced higher levels of acids, which could make for better shochu, and white koji mutated from black koji sometime in the 1920s, and it's one of the most popular types now as it gives a gentler, sweeter flavor. The koji is inoculated into a host, which is usually rice, and then it's let grow. So this koji room, all those boxes contain aspergillus mold spores growing on probably rice. When they get to a certain size, they're combined with yeast in the first fermentation, and they ferment for up to a week, going crazy. And then in the second fermentation, you add the base ingredient, rice, sweet potato, barley, whatever it is. You ferment it again, and what you have at the end goes into the still. Believe it or not, this submarine-shaped thing is a pot still. But this is also a pot still. And this is also a pot still made from cedar wood. In fact, reduced pressure pot stills, like this one here, have become popular as they allow you to distill at less than 78 degrees Celsius. Whatever still you use, when the shochu comes out, it's stored in stainless steel or in ceramics. It can also be stored in wooden barrels, of course, or underground. A lot of shochu, including our mori, is stored underground in caves, deep underground. The tradition is you buy a 1.8 liter bottle to mark a particular occasion, and the distillery stores it for you. As you can see, this one was for the birth of a child. After 5 or 10 or 20 years, you go back and open that shochu and enjoy it. There's different ways to drink shochu. Of course, straight up or on the rocks, mizuwari with water or sodawari with sparkling water, but it's a life-changing thing to drink good shochu with oyawari, hot water. You must try it. Well, that was a brief run through Shochu 101. Thank you for joining me, and please continue your educational journey with the JSS. Let's go back to our main view. There we go. And Brian, I think you're up, mate. I think you've got a couple of cocktails to make for us.
Excellent. Yeah,
I don't think I've seen the recipes. I really want to, but then I'll have some questions for you. So Mr. Brian Matthys, take it away.
Sounds great. Sounds great. So for me, one of the really great things about shochu is diversity. So I have two very different shochus here. I think the theme today, we kind of wanted to go American style cocktails. Obviously, you can go really any direction you want with shochu. So for the first one, I'm going to use, it's Kozura Curl, which is an emo shochu. So it's a sweet potato shochu. It is from the Satsuma region of Kagoshima. And the Kuro represents black. So this is a black Koji shochu. Now, usually with black Koji, you get more earthy type flavors, which certainly this one has, but there is a bit of fruit as well. So I decided to pair it with something else that comes from Satsuma, which is a mandarin orange or a Satsuma. So I'm going to use a little bit of the juice of that. So I'm going to use a half an ounce. A little more shochu this morning. So half an ounce of that, half an ounce of lemon juice just to give a bit of acidity. The mandarin, of course, is going to bring some sweetness, but I don't know if I mentioned this is a punch, so this is called Satsuma Punch. And then for the sweet and spice component, I am using a red wine cinnamon syrup, and about 1/3 of an ounce of that. I don't want to add too much additional sweetness because we also have some from the juice. And then for the shochu, I'm going to do 2.5 ounces. And
how strong is that one, Brian?
So this one is 25%.
Excellent.
And yeah, obviously, we'll probably talk a little bit more about that later, but shochu can range anywhere from 20 to 45%. But even though this one's a little bit lower proof, it's still really, really expressive. So we're going to shake this up. And I've served this either with or without ice. Today I'm going to serve it with ice, but it works out great either way.
Ooh.
And then I'm just going to garnish it with a little lemon twist. Cheers. So yeah, just a nice citrusy punch. The red wine obviously brings a little bit of complexity. I used a medium-bodied red wine, but that's another element where you can really sort of tailor it how you like it, or just whatever you have laying around works really, really well. So for the other one, I have a Sesame Shochu, which is from Beniotome. This is one I think you find quite a bit in the States. It's also incredibly unique. You don't really see sesame flavored spirits a whole lot. So this is a really unique flavor profile to work with. And I decided to make a flip with that. So this one is white Koji, by the way. And I'm going to do 2 ounces of this with Beniotome.
Brian, what's the base of, what's the raw material?
So obviously it's listed as sesame, but if you think about it, trying to take sesames and get sugar out of that starch would be an incredibly difficult process. So it is wheat and rice as well. And then the percentages, if you want to know those, so it's 60% wheat, 30 rice, and then 10% sesame. But it is, and they toast the sesame, by the way. So it is really expressively sesame. You know, you think of 10% may not sound like a lot, but for a toasted sesame flavor, it really, really comes through. Because of the flip, sorry, that's what makes shochu incredibly interesting. Is just there's so many different flavors. You do see a little bit of wheat, but yeah, I don't think it's as common as the other ones by any means. So I'm going to add a Malmsey Madeira. This is going to bring some sweetness as well as complexity. Half an ounce of that, and then coconut syrup. So I just took coconut cream and mixed it equal parts with sugar. I'm going to do 1/4 of an ounce of this. The Madeira is bringing some sweetness as well. But again, these are all things that you can adjust. If you like it a little bit sweeter, certainly add more of the coconut. And then for this one, I'm going to dry shake it first. You could certainly just shake it really aggressively. Do the reverse dry shake, whatever you like. But this is almost sort of like an a la minute eggnog, if you will. There's no cream in it, but it has that rich mouthfeel and texture that you get from the egg. And the sesame really comes through. So this one I'm going to serve up in this dessert wine glass here. You can see the nice color from the egg. And then for garnish, I'm just going to grate a little nutmeg on top.
Oh, quick question. Is that a whole egg, just the yolk?
Whole egg. I did whole egg.
Whole egg, great.
Yeah. So yeah, cheers.
That is a hell of a drink. So quick question, Brian. I thought that the first drink they're both amazing looking, but the Satsuma Punch is very true to the origins of shochu, because the first time anyone wrote about hard liquor in Japan, it was a Portuguese explorer who had some. It was probably rice distillate, and he described it as araki, meaning arak, which is also one of the original punch ingredients.
Yes, absolutely. So, you think about the punch, right? That goes back hundreds of years. So it's one of those great building blocks that you can do whatever with. You have citrus, spirit, water, spice, a little bit of sugar. So it's really sort of infinitely playable to however you want. You have all types of different citrus. I used something from the region, but you can really go a lot of different directions with that. And then with spice and sweet, you can go a ton of different directions too. So yeah, I think it's a really fun type of cocktail. You could serve this warm as well. You talked about oiwari. So certainly wintertime, I think with the red wine, this would work great heated as well. But really it sort of works year round. Obviously now we're in citrus season. People tend to think of citrus more maybe in their summer drinks, but obviously it's a winter fruit. So
what's the main difference when you choose to use shochu versus, say, gin, rum, whiskey? Does it fit into most templates?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously with those, with gin, you certainly have botanical notes. Whiskey is generally going to be more oak forward than you'll get with, a lot of shochus are aged in oak as well, but they can't be aged for a really long period of time, or they can't pick up a lot of color. That's the main requirement for oak aged shochu. So, but with rums too, you talk about all of those and you have incredible diversity. And I love all of those spirits, but I think easily you can make the argument that shochu is if not the most diverse spirit on the planet, it's certainly up there. When you talk about Koji, base material, yeast, you talked about the two different distillation methods, different aging types. So there's really, it runs the gamut, different strengths. So there's really so much you can do with shochu. And I think you can absolutely plug it into traditional Western spirit templates, but you can really kind of do whatever you want.
Well, here's a question for you. Do you start with a shochu and then choose the cocktail, choose the template? Or do you think to yourself, a 40% shochu would work really well here, or this would be better for a 25% one?
Yeah, so I've certainly done both, where either you have something in mind with a particular shochu, or you have, maybe I have an ingredient that I want to work with, and then I'll match the shochu with it. As far as strength, I think one thing that's really interesting about shochu, when here in the West, when sort of the cocktail renaissance began, I think we were really enamored with barrel proof and higher proof spirits, and rightfully so, those work really well in certain types of cocktails. Then we also had a nice shift to sort of lower ABV and aperitif style cocktails. And a lot of people sort of get hung up on sort of the proof and the strength of shochu. And what do you do with it? If it's 25% ABV, does it still work as 2 ounces in a typical template? And for me, I think, you talked about the production process, single distillation, they really punch above their weight. Now, certainly there's some, if you're talking vacuum distillation, there's some that are almost like a ginjo sake, and those are much more delicate. And then obviously, you're going to tailor the cocktail to that. But I think there are plenty that at a 25% ABV, I happen to use 2.5 ounces for this cocktail, but I've made it with 2 and it works really, really well. And this one, I only use 2 ounces. This is also 25% ABV. So I think, sometimes you want that extra punch, that extra strength. And there are certainly shochus that have that, but I think even at the lower ABV, they work really, really well.
Yeah, the versatility is the key. I couldn't agree more. So, by the way, all the recipes you're seeing and all the recipes of the previous webinars are going to be very shortly online with beautiful photos, explanations, and listings. So don't worry too much about taking notes. Just follow at JSS_Shochu on Instagram and all will be revealed. So, from the cold, rainy streets of New York to the sun-kissed golden streets of California. Thomas, how you doing, buddy?
Hello there. Very good.
You've got a nice setup there, and I understand your niece is taking a break from online school to let you use her iPad. So without further ado, do you want to make us some drinks?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm also using a sweet potato shochu from Satsuma. This is my drink is called Shiitake Drift. So I'm kind of playing with the Fast and the Furious game. The movie Tokyo Drift, just for fun. But yeah. So like you were saying, you were asking about building. Where do you start with a shochu drink and how do you build it? I'm using a Genshu, the Kuradashi Genshu from Satsuma Shuzo, and immediately, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I'm used to drinking, which is higher proof spirits. That's not to say that the lower proof don't have great flavor, but this one in particular is special. And I actually, to be perfectly honest, prefer to drink it either neat or with warm water. My favorite way to drink shochu. But today I decided to do, again, a little bit of a riff. I stay close to the classics. The classics are at my heart. So I'm doing a bit of a riff on a Manhattan cocktail, but playing off of sort of some of the chocolatey notes that this shochu has. So I'm going to start first. This is just a technical thing that I like to do with my stirred cocktails. Is I'm going to chill down my mixing glass first and set that off to the side. And then in a smaller carafe, I'm going to build the whole drink. And the idea behind this is that all of the ingredients will hit the ice at the exact same time, sort of making a consistent drink. So a Manhattan spec, in my mind, is a little bit heavier than a lot of other specs. So this is going to be hefty 2.5 ounces of Genshu. And if you don't know, Genshu is just basically straight off the still. It's not diluted with water, so it stays at still strength. This one's 37%. I've seen them around 40 and even slightly above. So it makes sense for me to put this into a Manhattan spec because you're gonna pack the punch that I guess the Western world is looking for. Here's a little thing that I did to make this drink a bit more unique. So I'm using these are dried shiitake mushroom caps. Not only are they pretty, but they're very flavorful. And I thought it made a lot of sense to put this into an infusion where you're going to reconstitute a lot of that concentrated mushroom flavor into vermouth. But the vermouth I'm also using is an oxidized vermouth. It's Noli Pratt Amber vermouth. It's basically a sweet vermouth or a red vermouth, but it's made to be a bit drier. So it has a lot less sugar in it. And it's going to give you a bit of that kind of like sherry or tawny port sort of flavor that has a savory note to it. Works really, really well with...
How long did you infuse them in for, Thomas?
24 hours.
All right.
I actually have recipes for the infusions and the syrups that I do today that we can post on the website or however, that works. So from here, we're just going to do a dash of Angostura bitters, pretty classic for a Manhattan. I'm playing a little bit more off of the sort of salty umami characteristics of the Shochu and this infused vermouth with pink sea salt. This is a saline solution that I take pink sea salt, warm water, 10 to 1. Basically, you're making salt water. And I use salt water in almost all of my cocktails. Usually cocktails contain sugar, and sugar and salt work really well together. Ask any baker. Let's see here. Here's the final ingredient of the cocktail, which it's stated is a quarter of a teaspoon. So, but if you don't have a quarter of a teaspoon, it's about a dash. I'm using tamari, which is like a soy sauce substitute that has a lot of like umami mushroom flavor. So this is really going to seal the deal when bringing out that mushroom flavor in the cocktail.
You're really doubling down on umami, huh?
Yeah, I guess I am. I mean, that's what I love about Shochu the most is that, it's so much different than drinking, sweet gins and like smooth vodkas and round whiskeys. You have a whole nother world of flavor that you're playing with, So this ice has just been sitting here in this glass. It's sort of settled down a little bit. It's also chilled the glass. And then I'm just going to pour off whatever excess ice has melted, just so you're not putting more water into the drink that's not chilling it. And then what I'm going to do is just, as I said, all the liquid is now mixed together and we'll hit the ice at the same time. And then this is a bit of a boring part, but it's going to be 30 seconds of stirring just to make sure it's really nice and cold. That dilution, brings that higher proof Genshu down to, a reasonable drinking spot.
Oh, you're right. It is boring.
Yeah. Anybody got a joke?
Well, a couple of shout outs to the people joining us. Mike, thanks for coming along. Nico, Gary, thanks for joining us here and for putting up with our really long stir. Paul, Paula, of course. So, I'm excited to see how this turns out.
I've got 2.5 ounces of Genshu Shochu, an ounce of Shiitake infused vermouth, some tamari just to bring out a little more saltiness, actual salt, Angostura bitters, and then I'm going to garnish with one of the caps here, nice and pretty on the side. And then just for another extra bit for aromatic, I'm going to do some fresh cracked pepper. Just a quick turn, not enough to make the drink spicy, but just enough to sort of lift some of those umami sort of flavors, those rich, savory flavors. But that's the shiitake drift.
That's a good looking drink, Thomas.
Thanks,
Why
sir.
did you stir it rather than shake it?
Well, just generally speaking, I have shaken drinks that should be stirred and I have stirred drinks that should be shaken. But in general, if you're just using spirituous ingredients, you want to kind of keep those delicate flavors intact without, they say bruising, but that sounds kind of lame. But when you shake just a straight spirit, you don't have as much control over the dilution rate and then the chill rate either. So it's just a more delicate process, and it really kind of keeps more of those velvety flavors and subtle flavors intact. Where if you were to shake it, you might risk diluting it too much, and it would turn watery and flavorless.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm going to take a quick sip of this.
But Thomas, I can't taste that. I wish I could. But obviously, shochu and to a lesser degree, nihonshu, sake, are famously the umami spirits. Can you have too much umami in a cocktail?
I mean, there's a fine line there for sure. This drink is, I don't know if I would trust anyone else to make it for me. Like I said, there's a quarter of a teaspoon of tamari in it. So we're getting down to some pretty intricate proportions. But I don't know. It just really depends on the soju. So like Brian said before, it kind of doesn't matter to me if it's high proof or low proof, or if it's, white koji and black koji definitely have a huge flavor difference. I don't know. It's like Brian said, there's so many different varieties and different ways that it could be done. When we're used to adding a base raw material like wheat or whatever it is, sugar, and then yeast, and like that's kind of it. Now we're introducing koji into the whole thing, and koji really just changes the dynamic completely. And some sojus are really, really dry and clean, and a lot of people have in the past, I've heard refer to it as like Japanese vodka, which I don't agree with at all. But there are definitely sochus out there that are just as clean and bright as any good vodka. But I mean, today for me, I'm using sweet potato sochus, and in general, what I noticed when we were in Miyazaki is that sweet potato sochus have a bit more richness, a bit more umami, like deeper flavors. And for me, that's fun to work with because I just like those flavors in general, even in food.
Brilliant. Do you have another cocktail for us, Thomas?
I do, yes. I'm coming right up. Sorry for all the yakking away. So the second cocktail I'm going to make, I'm calling the Miyazaki Martini. It's loosely based off of an espresso martini, and you can laugh all you want about it. I personally like an espresso martini, especially if you make it a little bit more interesting, which I feel like I did today. So this is this is Kokoru potato sochu. It's mostly sweet potato, but there is a little bit of rice in it. And this is not a genshu, so this one is watered down to 25% alcohol. And just the sweetness and the flavors I got off of this one, I really liked. It made me think of coffee. And, coffee has sort of a lot of savory notes to it, as well. I don't have to explain to you what coffee tastes like, but I really felt like this sochu complemented coffee a lot. And so I just went for it and made a sort of an espresso martini. You'll see in just one sec what I've done to make it different. Just get set up here. So I am going to use a full 2 ounces of this sochu.
Is that lower strength?
This is 25% alcohol, yes. And then I'm going to use an ounce of espresso. If you're not lucky enough to have an espresso machine at home, I have one of these little Nespresso machines I'm using for you today. But I've used cold espresso before. If you really wanted to make this drink, you can go to your coffee shop, get an espresso. It's not really going to change the cocktail in the end if the espresso's been sitting for an hour, because we're going to shake it up anyway. And then here's sort of my secret ingredient in this cocktail, which is a sweet potato syrup. So I'm actually taking Japanese sweet potatoes, which sort of look like an American yam or whatever, but they're white on the inside. And they're hyper sweet. So yes, you're getting a bit of a savory note, like it's a potato, but it has a lot of sweetness to it. And when I make the syrup, I add a little bit of vanilla extract and just a touch of nutmeg, kind of classic flavors that work well with potato. But what I'm really getting at the end with this potato syrup is a bit of a mouthfeel, a texture. It has a little bit more weight to it, and it really works. That richness works really well in espresso martini style cocktail. So I'm going to use a half of an ounce here. And then again, I'm going to add a dash of saline solution. It's just enough salt, not to taste, but to sort of balance the drink and bring a je ne sais quoi. And then I've got just a couple drops of vanilla extract added as well. So we're playing with that fine line of sort of sweet and savory. Okay. Get my glass. I'm not using a traditional martini glass. I'm using this fancy little guy. I keep all my glassware in the freezer as well. I recommend that you do if you want delicious cold drinks. And then in coffee drinks or egg white drinks, anything that froths up really nice, I like to fine strain. You end up getting a really, really nice frothy head and a smooth velvety texture on the mouthfeel when you put your mouth to it. And then just to garnish it, I'm going to add a little bit of fresh nutmeg on top. And that's the Miyazaki Martini.
That's a good-looking drink. How's it taste?
It's really nice. The sochu, you know, you'd think coffee would overpower. Obviously, coffee overpowers vodka in an espresso martini, but it doesn't overpower the strength of the flavor of the sochu. Even at 25% alcohol, it really packs a lot of flavor. Really, like, has deep, like, umami richness, and like it works well. You know, you're actually drinking a cocktail that has, you know, more than just one flavor in it. Brilliant.
Well, as I said, all those recipes will be online with nice photos and even how-to videos on JSS_Shochu, the Instagram of the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association. So Thomas, we'll get back with you in a little bit, but it's time to go from the sun-kissed Golden State back to the cold and rainy Empire State, where the main men of the world-famous employees-only cocktail bar are coming to us live from the fantastic Liquor Lab. Frankie, Dev, how you doing?
Hello, everybody. Well, I'm going to go first. My name is Dev Johnson. I'm a partner here at Liquor Lab, as well as a principal bartender here at, as Phil said, employees only. And thank you for that kind introduction, Phil. Much appreciated. And Brian and Thomas, thank you so much for sharing those cocktails with us. Those sound delicious. I am gutted that I'm not there drinking them, or at least shooting them with you guys. I wish I was. But here I am in New York City. We're down here in Soho at the Liquor Lab studios here. And I'm going to walk you through one of the more simple drinks of the class. And the reason I did this is because, well, first of all, let me talk about the shochu. The shochu is a jogo shochu. It comes from the Kagoshima district. It is 40% rice, and one of the oddballs out in this case, it has 60% sugar cane. In that case, what they call brown sugar when it comes to shochu. So that being said, it does have some kind of like Japanese pear flavors to it, a little bit of plum in there, some light cherry flavor is what I've noticed. I've been sipping it for the last half an hour or so. It is delicious. So what I wanted to do, again, we're trying to take shochu and bring it to the West and kind of show how it can be used in American style cocktails, right? Or Western style cocktails, to be more specific. What I'm doing is I'm doing a little riff on an old fashioned. Now I'm using, this is like I said before, it's a 24% on, maybe I didn't say it's 24% ABV. So that's 48 proof shochu here, which means it's light. It's very delicate, as Thomas and Brian mentioned before, in terms of flavor profile. And I didn't really want to, as Thomas said, bruise that too much or influence it too much and take away that shochu flavor. So what I wanted to do is, I'm going to do it with you guys here, is I kept it real simple, and especially for home bartenders, especially since most of us are home now anyway, to use something that's commonly found in the house to make cocktails with, right? And keep it as simple as possible, because in my mind, in a lot of ways, simplicity equals elegance in some ways, and in this case, I believe it does. So what I did is I found some black tea. I'm using an English breakfast tea, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to infuse the little bit of shochu that I'm using, actually 3 ounces of shochu that I'm using, with the black tea. And the great thing about alcohol in all of its forms, whether it be a Western spirit or an Eastern spirit, like shochu itself, is that alcohol will always take on the color and flavor from whatever you put inside of it and whatever you put it inside of. And that's primarily why when they're making shochu and aging shochu, as they say, it's not being aged the same way whiskey or rum would be aged, because they're putting it in non-porous, non-flavorful containers, ceramic, glass, steel, right? So that's a good thing, because that means just all those delicate flavors that you get with the shochu without being inhibited or influenced by wood in that respect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 3 ounces of the shochu here. And because it is such a low proof, I want to put a little extra in there. So rather than 2 ounces like we would normally do in an old fashioned, I wanted to do 3 ounces. And what I want the shochu to do is basically take on the flavors of that tea. And I figured tea culture in the East is a big thing. Shochu culture is a big thing. And in the West, we don't really play with teas too much. And again, it's one of those things you can use from home that you can find pretty easily. So if you want to use not only a black tea like I'm using today, you could use a chamomile tea, you could use a pomegranate raspberry tea, which will add flavor to the spirit itself. So once you get that in there, You just want to kind of tap that tea bag, make sure it's completely immersed in the shochu so it starts taking on. You might even notice, I'm not sure you can see it on the screen or not, but it's already taking the color on of the shochu. And you want to leave that in for about 3-4 minutes or so. The longer you leave it in, of course, the more flavor from the tea you're going to get. The less time you leave it in, the less flavor you're going to get. So I've already kind of so we're not waiting around 3 and 4 or 5 minutes for us to use the shochu. I kind of pre-steeped it or pre-infused it. So then when you take the tea bag out, and you can use these tea bags again, just like making regular tea, you can also reuse these tea bags a number of times, just like you would when you're making tea at home. So kind of just press out that extra shochu out of that bag there. So we get that out. We don't waste any of that shochu that we have there. Set that tea bag aside in case you want to use it again. And you can see all that color that came in from the black tea here. And what that's going to do is going to give it aroma, get some tannins from that tea as well. But obviously, you know, Eastern spirits and teas come from Eastern culture. And for me, that just makes sense. They just work well together. And so you get to keep the flavor of the shochu and just kind of add this little extra flavor from the tea in there. And then to expand that flavor, when we make it, we're going to add a little bit of sugar, just like we would in an old fashioned. So, and carry that flavor and brighten it up a little bit. We're going to use a 1/2 ounce of simple syrup. I used a 1-to-1 simple syrup, so 1 part sugar, obviously, to 1 part water. Just put a little bit in there, just kind of help carry and expand that flavor in the cocktail, just like that. And then we're going to throw that in some ice and stir it up real quick. So here we go. Let's fill our mixing glasses or stirring glasses up with ice if you want to. Put it in there. I don't want to stir for too long because I don't want to over dilute this. So I'm just gonna put it in there, stir it a little bit until it's cold, nice and cold. So I really just don't want to, just don't want to influence and take over that flavor of the shochu too much, and too much water, too much dilution obviously can do that. So I'm just gonna stir this up until my glass starts getting a little chilled here on the outside, a little frosty, which will probably happen pretty quickly here in New York. We're expecting snow this week, which I'm really looking forward to. I love the snow. I do, really.
It's just rain today, unfortunately.
It did, unfortunately. We just got rain today. But here we go. We're gonna pour this over some fresh ice. There we go. Set that down there. And then I'm not gonna use a strainer. I'm just gonna put my spoon in front here and just very carefully strain that over the ice, nice and easy, just like that. So if you don't have all these tools at home, it's okay. Especially even if you're a bartender, it's okay. You can just, you know, make do with what you got. I think that's really the most important thing, is that it gets in there, it's done in a relatively proper way. And of course, to this, I want to add a little orange twist on top. So I want to give it a nice nose to kind of play with those tannins that come in the black tea, and also kind of brighten up and bring out some of those other like pear notes and cherry notes from the shochu. So I'm not very good with those little Y peeler things, the mixology peelers. I'm horrible at those things. I always cut myself to get, and I wouldn't want to do that on screen, of course. So I'm just going to peel myself a little bit of orange here, just like that. And this one, express that over the top. And if you look at it after you're done, you can kind of get the right angle. You see some of those oils on top, and that just really kind of adds flavor to the cocktail there. And so there it is. We make the Tawari and beyond. You can see the recipe up here on the screen. If you guys want to screenshot that for future use, please do. Otherwise, it will be, of course, in the recorded or edited seminar that will be presented to everybody. And so here we are. Cheers, everybody. Tawari and beyond.
Slick, Dev. And I do want to have another cocktail from you in a moment, but one of the questions I was going to ask you, coincidentally, was what cocktail do you like to use to introduce people to shochu?
Well, like you said before, I really, really like, and if I remember correctly, because I'm pretty bad with the terms, with the awamari with the hot water. That is my favorite way to introduce people to shochu. And I really like to take them, if we're having ramen or something like that. When we traveled to Kyushu last year, we had the opportunity to have ramen, and they put some shochu in the ramen itself. And I just loved that they did that, because the heat of the water really helps those flavors even magnify and expand even more than even just the sugar does. The coolness of this drink kind of tones us down a little bit, but that heat really brings out the flavor profile of the shochu. And then mixed in with the miso or whichever type of ramen you're having, they just really play really well together. And of course, that heat help those aromatics hit your soft palate, which bring more intensity to the flavor for us as we.
But I mean, for us here in the West, obviously, that's a little unusual, although obviously people have been drinking, you know, liquor with hot water for a long time. An old-fashioned, on the other hand, very approachable.
Pretty common, right?
You kind of twisted it there, a little bit of tea. I mean, I think that's a really great way to get people, you know, dipping their toe into the pool that is shochu.
Yes, indeed. I also like to have oysters with the shochu and pour a little bit of shochu in the oyster before you eat it. And that just kind of helps too. It really gets some flavor combinations in there that are really, really nice. The umami from the oysters, of course, plays really nicely with the shochu itself. So those
Do
are
you want
great
to make
ways
a
to
second
introduce
cocktail
people to
now, or do you want to have Frankie jump in and make one? How would you like
Yeah,
it?
we'll have Frankie come in and make that other one, and I'll prepare. I'll get my other stuff prepared for the second one. That way, Frankie and I can bounce back and forth.
All right.
I was under the impression I was only making one cocktail today, so forgive me. It'll take me a second. That's why I'm letting Frankie get in there and
Oh, that's
set
cool.
everything up. Yeah. So I was under the impression I was only making one today, so we chose this one. But I'll get the other stuff together. And unfortunately, I don't have the bottle for my second shochu, but I'll tell you guys all about it when I get back.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dev.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will agree with Dev about eating. I mean, all seafood is just so good with soju. Works so perfectly well.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate that, brother. Anyway, I hope you all are enjoying this the webinar so far, and we'll let Frankie Kurt get on here from Employees Only, and he'll get into making his cocktail. So I'll see you all in a few minutes. Cheers.
Thanks, Dev. Come on down, Frankie. I imagine Frankie is thinking, great, we got rid of the old guy. Now it's my time. How you doing, Frankie?
Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Frank. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you, all of you guys. Thank you for having me here. It's a great opportunity for me to be here and be able to make a cocktail with soju. It's actually the first time that I'm playing around with soju. When I get in contact and get the bottle and start tasting it and getting involved with this, which is amazing. I love the fact it's 40% rice. It's a nice flavor. So today I'm gonna make a cocktail that we're gonna start with using some strawberries, shiso,
Cool.
super fine sugar. So we're gonna start with it, adding 1 tablespoon of super fine sugar. We're gonna grab 1 strawberry and 1 shiso leaf. Gently clap, just drop it inside. We're gonna grab some lime juice, add half an ounce of the lime juice. And we're gonna gently muddle these ingredients together to combine them. After that, we're gonna add half an ounce of Aperol. Half an ounce of homemade hibiscus cordial. One dash grapefruit bitters.
What was the cordial you used?
Hibiscus cordial.
Oh, hibiscus. Okay.
Yes. And we're gonna do 1.5 ounces of Toyonaga soju.
Classic employees only pour.
Gotta love
So the name for this cocktail, it's called Soju Beautiful. I tried to make kind of like a refreshing tiki drink with all these ingredients because I believe this is something that this is the way that we're gonna try to bring the flavors from there to here in America. So we're gonna add a little bit of ice into our thing. So what I'm going to do with this cocktail, I'm not gonna shake it, I'm not gonna stir. I'm gonna throw the cocktail. What I wanna get from this drink, it's just get a little bit cold. I don't wanna get too much dilution. I just wanna get it like nice and cold.
Aerated as well.
Exactly, add some air, but we don't wanna add too much oxygen. That's something that you get when you shake the drink. I'm gonna grab a nice glass and a beautiful shiso leaf. Stuck. I'm gonna add some crushed ice. And we're going to grab a beautiful strawberry, put it on top. Straw, of course. And here you're gonna have this soju, beautiful.
That is beautiful, Frank. So when you first tasted the shochu, was that the first shochu you'd ever had?
I had one soju before, but I really I wasn't into the whole cocktail world, the whole spirit experience, so I didn't get too much of it. But this one was completely different. I actually tasted it. I read some about it, start getting more information, so I can kind of come out with a cocktail and the whole thing. And it was very tasty. I loved it. I love playing with it. So I decided to create this cocktail, getting some refreshness, something that people look today and days in the bar. So that's what I was trying to create and push it into this cocktail.
And was there like a sort of a model for your cocktail? Do you think, oh, it's kind of a Collins, or oh, it's kind of a this?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Did you have a sort of a template for the cocktail? Did you think, it's like a Collins but with shochu, or it's like a this but with shochu? Yes.
So pretty much the idea, it's I was just trying to get ingredients that I actually like. I'm Latino, so hibiscus is something very traditional in my country. So I was trying to get those flavors, make a cordial with that. And then Aperol, I like those orange notes, adding some grapefruit into it, and then putting the soju into that. I just combined them and I got that amazing flavor. And I was like, this is a very refreshing drink. So let's throw some crushed ice, make it into a tiki style. And just came out very nice. When I was making it, I was playing with that. I was showing the people in the bar staff the cocktail that I came out, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is really good." So when you got a chance and you try this one, it's gonna be very tasty.
I'll have to get down to Christopher Street. That's a brilliant idea. Well, Frank, thanks very much. I think Dev's going to wait one more drink, and then we're all going to have a bit of a chat and a drink. And if anybody who's tuning in has questions for me, or more importantly for Dev and you, Frank, and Thomas and Brian, that's the best time to have it. And otherwise, we're going to talk about everything and nothing and keep the vibe going. So I don't know if we can drag Dev back into the shot.
Yes, Dev is coming right now.
I like the Christmas decorations of the Liquor Lab, by the way. Very festive.
Yeah, they're doing amazing. It's lovely. There you go. He's back.
And one quick question that just came up from Paul. Paul, I don't know if you're still with us. I think you are. But the question was, where do we buy or obtain shochu? One of the weirdest things and great things about living in America is that compared to many other countries, it's really quite easy to get hold of shochu. Like here in New York State, you've got almost every shochu you'd ever want. So Astor Wine and Spirits has a lot of them, and they ship to like 30 states. MTC Trading here in Midtown New York has all the crazy stuff. Kuraichi in Brooklyn. And between New York and California, California obviously has a huge Asian and especially Japanese population. You can get everything that you would ever want, like your heart's desire.
I mean, I'll just throw my 2 cents in here. Umami Mart in Oakland, they ship to most states. There's an exception of like 5 states, but they'll ship soju and sake to most states in the United States.
Oh yeah, so Paul, K&D Wines, are we talking about the Upper East Side? Because if we are, I'm thinking yes. That's actually one of my local liquor stores. I'm a UES guy myself. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I did have a question. I was going to ask Thomas actually, but I'm going to throw it out to everybody. Right? What's more useful as a way to think about making shochu cocktails? Thinking of it as an aged spirit, like we might think about whiskey or rum, or thinking about it like an unaged spirit? What do we think?
I mean, I think it depends on if it's aged or not. But, you know, I mean, I guess the way I look at it, for me personally, I see that some of the sort of the oaky flavors you get from whiskeys and, you know, in Kentucky and the United States, you achieve a lot of those richer sort of vanilla flavors and fruity flavors. You get some of that stuff from the Koji. You know, some of my favorite things to mix with Shochu are the bigger, richer, you know, aged ones. So I feel like Shochu kind of covers like all of those grounds. Like I've even used Shochus that even have a bit of a like pininess or like almost like a gin complexity, you know, lighter on that spectrum, you know, not so heavy bodied, but I feel like you can get Shochus that have all different flavors across the board. It's a whole nother door that we haven't really opened yet in the Western world. I feel like, especially for cocktails. You could make a whiskey sour or a whiskey sour style cocktail with the right soju. You could also make a martini with the right soju.
As you did. I mean, Brian, you're our resident Japanophile. What do you think? Like, because it's about flavor intensity at the end of the day, isn't it?
Right. So, I mean, we certainly do see oak age shochu, and they tend to be a little bit lighter than what we think of. You know, obviously, barley we have barley oak age shochu, so, but they tend to be much lighter than if we're talking about Scotch whiskey or other malted barley based spirits. But like Thomas said, with Koji, it's a whole other ballgame. So, you know, you could have something like this that's not aged for very long, but it has black Koji, it has sweet potato, so it's incredibly expressive. And I think you can absolutely look at this as an aged spirit. And then if you look at Awamori, they have the Shitsugi method that's like a Solera system. So, you know, they do have Awamoris that have average aging of 30, 40, 50 years, but there's also some that are much younger, but because of that aging methodology, even though they're in ceramic generally, they're still incredibly expressive. So I think, you know, again, there's truly a shochu for everyone. I think most of us can take almost any spirit and make a cocktail for somebody that doesn't like that spirit. But with shochu, you'd be really hard pressed to find somebody that couldn't find the shochu that they like.
I'll also add one more thing too. This kind of going back to a question you guys talked about when you were making your drinks, Brian. But you know, there are shochus. The argument that Americans seem to like to have are that, you know, if it's not high enough in alcohol, it's not going to work well in cocktails. That's so like it couldn't be more untrue. You could have a Polish vodka at night, you know, at 90 proof, and it would be clean as a whistle. You wouldn't taste anything except for burn. At 25%, sochus can pack so much more flavor than, you know, your ABV argument doesn't really like stand up, I don't think. Because
speaking of ABV,
soju can be crazy flavor.
Yeah, I think a lot of Western bartenders, it's sort of a shift in thinking, but absolutely, once you start playing with these, you know, 1.5, 2 ounces, the flavor comes through so well. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, even in a low ABV drink, you're still getting packed with a mouthful of flavor and body, and I mean, the concentration of flavor is there. You know, I don't see that ABV has much to do with it.
Can you guys hear me at all?
No, it's really weird, Dev. But let me just answer a question first. So Mike was asking,
that works now.
Is the shochu distilled to 25%? No, it's always distilled to a higher percent, and then it will often be diluted down to the more commercially acceptable 25%, typically. But
absolutely,
maybe your second question is more important. Is there a smoky shochu, you know, a smoky awamori, by which, as an Irishman, I would think you mean, you know, something peated, you know, with that turf smoke. And I don't think so. There's a lot of distilleries in Japan. There might be one of them experimenting with this. Who knows? But I think that I know that there are shochus, and especially awamoris, that have incredible complex flavors that are as unusual as smoky whiskeys, if that answers your question. Because normally what happens is the rice and the sweet potato, whatever it is steamed in these stainless steel kind of cookers, not on like, you know, barbecue cookers or something. Whereas in Ireland or Scotland or Kentucky or Canada, they might be heating the grain, and sometimes they heat it with a peat fire. So the smoke goes into the grain, you get a smoky whiskey. That's the thing. Everything kind of happens within stainless steel, typically in Japan. But if you want really intense, slap your mama mezcal type flavors, then it's awamori from the Ryukyu Islands every single day. It's single distill, pot still, black koji, long grain Thai rice. It is the mezcal to shochu's tequila, if that answers your question. Does anybody have any questions for Frank or Thomas or Dev or Brian or, God forbid, even me? Quick question from Paul. Favorite Irish whiskey? It's Powers, obviously. I mean, it's always Powers. It's always Powers. It's never,
Agreed.
It's never anything else. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're really grateful that you came along on the JSS Shochu educational journey. And we hope to see you back at the next webinar online, and most of all, hopefully in person very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for having us, everybody. Have a great day.